Greetings everyone, Brett here with Hammerhead Model Making, and we're back with another full build video, although this one's going to be a little bit unique. I was contacted by a company called Typhoon Legacy Co, and they are in the process of restoring a Hawker Typhoon. And as part of their restoration project, they have decided to create a 1/8 scale replica of the Napier Sabre engine that the Typhoon uses. And they reached out to me asking if I would provide feedback on just a small portion of what will eventually become this 1/8 scale engine. And that is what is known as the Coffman starter. And the Coffman starter is a shotgun style starter that sits on top of the engine and is used to help start the engine, hence the name. And so they sent me this kit. It is all resin, and it's cast resin, not 3D printed. And as you can see here, the packaging is quite nice for this. Everything is very well labeled. There's no unclarity as to what each part is, and it's very fascinating the level of fidelity they have achieved with this little kit here. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the eventual goal is to produce an actual 1/8 scale full kit of the engine. I don't know how many copies they will make, but yeah. So this video is going to be my build of this starter, and so I have the ability to show that to you, show this off, and hopefully some of you will be interested enough that you will go to the Typhoon Legacy website. I will link it down below, and perhaps you will feel like helping out and donating to the cause of restoring an amazing World War II warbird. Additionally, I did provide feedback on the kit to Typhoon Legacy Company, and that will help them hopefully refine the process and eventually add on to their final kit here. But you can see there's quite a few parts, and there's a lot that goes into just this small component of the engine. And if you look at pictures of the actual Napier Sabre engine, you can see the starter sits kind of on top towards the back, and it's just one small piece of a very large engine. So once you see how big this is in the end, you can kind of start to grasp just how big the actual engine will be in this scale. But so let's go ahead and jump in. Just for clarity's sake, you won't ever see me with instructions because the instructions are digital, they're online, and the majority of the time I spent actually preparing the parts and getting it ready was really just trying to identify which parts need to get painted what colors, organizing them and sorting them. There was very little actual preparation needed to be done on the parts themselves. They are pretty well ready to go. Just have to remove a couple of little casting block areas, a couple of seams, and that's really it. A little bit of, there wasn't even really any flash, considering that these are cast. So I don't know what mold process they are using, but it's quite nice. And so and if you've never worked with cast resin before, it's not much different than 3D printed resin, just in terms of how you deal with it and the tools that you will use. So I will primarily be using cyanoacrylate glue, CA glue, and or super glue. They're all the same thing to secure everything together. Your normal model cements aren't going to work on resin, and sometimes you need something stronger than a PVA type glue. But you can see here how the dry fit actually goes together pretty good. Parts in general fit really well. There's a couple of areas that I had some trouble with, and it's entirely possible that it's user error and not a problem with the actual casting, but nevertheless, I will point those areas out. You can see in that part up there that it has the screw in it. So the original, or the final version of the starter will mount directly to the engine, but for these little kits, they have provided a piece that you can mount it to something else, and that's what that little screw is for, is to mount it there. So here I've organized all the main parts into the different colors. There's going to be a gloss black, a brass color, and then a metal color, like a bare metal color. And I've organized them in my little tray here. I do keep a lot of the pipes separate, so just so that I can maintain and remember which parts they are. But we're gonna go ahead and start getting some color on this thing. The first color we're gonna start off with is the gloss black, and for that I am using the Mr. Hobby color for that. and one technical note in the video here, over the Christmas break, I completely rebuilt my workbench, and in doing so, I actually gave myself enough room that I can have 2 projects going on at once. And but in order to accommodate that, the way that I have to position my camera for one of the positions is kind of like different than how I normally film my stuff. So I'm still getting used to how to film with my new camera position. So I apologize. A lot of these like airbrushing shots, my airbrush is in the way. You're not really seeing a lot of it. That's because I'm still learning exactly how I want to position the camera for my new hobby location. But so I hope you'll bear with me over the next few videos as I figure that out here. But yeah, it's exciting that I now have the room to work on more than one project at once without having to like pack everything up, get something out, pack that up, move on to the other. Like I can have 2 projects simultaneously, film both projects, and it's really, really awesome. The this is a paint color that I do not use very often. And in fact, this Model Masters bottle of brass is probably pushing 25 years old. But it's enamel. It still works. It still sprays beautifully, and it really gives a convincing brass look, short of being actual brass. And it was kind of really a no-brainer here that because this was going to have so many brass parts, brass fittings, things like that, that it really made sense to use this paint than anything else. But you can see here I'm just going through, getting a lot of these parts painted. A lot of the tubing and piping is brass. Some of it's gloss black with brass fittings. That's why some of them are masked off. The rest will be brass with like bare metal fittings. I imagine on the real thing they're probably steel, but I could be wrong. I will be painting all the bare metal in an aluminum color, just because it's a much brighter color, and I think it looks a little nicer than like a traditional steel color. But so it may not be like 100% accurate, but I like the way it looks. So with all the major painting done, we can start working on assembly. And for like I mentioned before, I am using super glue or CA glue to secure all my parts together. And of course, my clumsy fingers. You're going to see me drop a few parts in this, and right now I'm using a glove just to make sure that I'm not like marring up all of my nice shiny pieces, specifically like the metal pieces. And but it didn't last very long because the problem with using a glove like this is I don't have a lot of like direct textile feedback when I'm holding parts, and I end up dropping the parts way more often when I'm using a glove. So I kind of ditched the glove eventually and decided to come up with a different solution, which you'll see shortly. But you can see this little builder's plate here going on. It looks really nice, and kind of definitely like looks the part. When you see the whole thing together, it looks like it's like a piece of like stamped brass that's been put on, as opposed to like a big piece that sits inside. It looks really good. But here we're kind of getting the biggest components of the starter put together. It's like the main body parts. And what I ended up doing was deciding that I decided to 3D print a little base for the starter to sit on. And so just using the screw that they provided, designed it, 3D printed it on my Bamboo Labs P1S printer. And this was really helpful because not only is it, just a nice place for the starter to live, but it also provides me a way to hold on to the starter as I'm doing the rest of the assembly without, actually touching it directly, risking getting my fingerprints all over it, as well as because I'm going to be putting a lot of these like really delicate pipes and hoses on it that minimize the chances of me breaking something, which is always a very high chance. So now that it's on the base, we can go ahead and continue on with assembling all the major components. So kind of the idea here is I'm going to assemble all the main mechanical components, then start working on all the piping, and then work on the actual like cylinders themselves, which you'll see later on. But up to this point, all of the parts fit really well, and it was really obvious where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to attach. So definitely well-designed work by the Typhoon Legacy Company team there for just, I mean, the level of engineering that has to go into designing a kit like this while maintaining like near perfect accuracy to the 1-to-1 scale version, which is very nice for them because they have a version that they can reference. But it's no small feat to design a kit like this, especially all in resin, kind of almost as a one-off. So for the metal metal fixtures on the piping, I decided to use my gallery metallic pen here. It's going to be a little bit easier than trying to mask all these little parts off and spray them, and it does a pretty good job of having a nice shine to it. Not quite as nice as like the Alclad airbrush paint, but close enough on these small parts. So now we can start getting these small parts installed, and there's a definite order that you have to do it in, because some pipes go over other pipes, some pipes go through other pipes, and so it's really critical to make sure that these are all getting done in the correct order. So I had to do a lot of dry fitting here and the instructions were pretty decent in trying to like in how all these parts fit together, but I did have to play around a little bit with just the order that they go together, and trying to like, okay, do I get this side of the piece in first and then the other side, or vice versa? It takes a little trial and error, but eventually I'm able to get there. But it's really fun to see how all of these parts fit together, and each part is labeled with like identified exactly what the part is and what its function is. So you could really, as you're building it, really get a good idea of like what each of these little components do and how they all work together for the holistic part. So it's it's really fun from just like the gaining the knowledge of this mechanical device and understanding the way it works. So now this part here was probably the part that I had the most trouble with. It has 3 points of connection here, and in my test fitting, I ended up breaking it. I was probably being a little rough with it, trying to force it. And as you can see here, that I'm trying to get this little U-bend shape attached, and I just could not get it to work. Eventually, I had to do a lot of test fitting trimming, in order to finally get it close to fitting, but I never really got it like 100%. I probably should have done more, dry fitting prior to painting, but it is what it is. The rest of the pipe work went together pretty good, with just a little bit of trimming here and there, but nothing terribly difficult. And again, I love all the layers and the way it all fits together, and obviously on the full size aircraft, these pipes would lead off to other portions of the engine. They don't just like stop in nowhere, but because we're trying, the build is an isolated unit, they just they've arbitrarily decided, okay, this is where the pipe's going to end. But just note that on the real thing, those would all be leading off to to other areas of the engine. But yeah, it's really fun seeing this part together. All right, so this part, these are the cylinders. So this is what would actually hold the shotgun shells, hence the name shotgun starter. And this was a really tricky part. So these got these circular flanges that are supposed to fit over the cylinders, And the hole in the center of the cylinder, the group of cylinders, was slightly off center. So trying to get all these parts to fit correctly was a bit of a challenge. And I had to do a lot of trimming, which was scary because these parts are extremely thin and very delicate. But fortunately, they do provide some spare parts in the kit for a lot of these smaller, more delicate pieces, just in case I screw something up. So I do appreciate that they recognize that these parts were delicate and that breaking and damage was a potential. But in the end, I was able to get it without damaging anything other than the paintwork here. I'm just touching up some of my paintwork because it had a tendency to want to scrape off as I was trying to get those parts on. These little parts here also fit within the cylinder, and they provide you extras just in case one goes flying off into oblivion or you break one, because again, these are very, very small, very, very delicate pieces, and they have to be threaded into through one hole and into a socket. So it took some time, and they had to be trimmed accordingly, just to get them to fit just right. So eventually I do get there. Building this little cylinder here, it's almost like a mini kit unto itself, took just about as long as doing the whole rest of the starter. And it felt like it had just as many parts as well. So, you get like a mini kit within a kit. But in the end, if you're careful and you take your time with it, it actually looks really cool in the end, because it's a very complex piece, and it looks really neat, especially with just like the bright shiny metal standing out against all the black and copper of the rest of the starter. And then now finally we get to add in the brass bases that would be the bases of the shotgun shell. If you're not familiar with what a shotgun starter is, I recommend looking up like a YouTube video on it. They're pretty cool. A lot of the old warbirds, like the Wildcats, they had them, and they would essentially use a shotgun shell that was just powder. There was no projectile in there to force start an engine, and so you can see that this one has 5 shots, 5 chances to start the engine, kind of a thing. Pretty cool. It's neat to see them actually working and how they work. And I definitely recommend watching a YouTube video on those. But so now we can go ahead and start building up the rest of the cylinder mechanism. And this is so detailed that you almost feel like you should be able to spin the cylinder and rotate to the next one in line. But that's beyond my skills to modify it to do that. But yeah, the rest of the build goes pretty well. So it took me a little trouble to get the actual cylinder onto the mount. I had to do a little bit of trimming, a little bit of things here and there, but I was able to get it on, and it looks great on there. And now we can finish up the rest of the piping. So we got this big pipe, or like a manifold, going on here, and I love like the gloss black and the brass. It works really cool, or it just looks really cool, I think. And it's they're good contrast to each other, I think. But so the final little bits here going on, these like this little brass bit that I'm putting on here, that required a lot of trimming. There was some excess material on that one that I had to get removed, especially like in between those 2 little cylinder parts there. But once I was able to get that cleared up, it looks pretty nice. This little crank here. Now there are additional like scratch built details that I could add to this, and Typhoon Legacy had like provided reference pictures for me to do that, but I kind of felt like it would do it more justice to actually build the kit as is out of the box, just to provide them the feedback that they're looking for, that kind of stuff. So I opted not to add the additional details, and now I'm just going to do a little bit of touch-up work. And one of the things that as I was putting this together, I thought of was like those old like cutaway, diagrams and models of things that would always have like red in the portions that were being cut away. So that's what, like, I decided, like, okay, I'll mark off the ends of these pipes as though they were quote unquote cut away, to denote that isn't the normal regular ending point for for those parts. Kind of a neat little way to add some color. And additionally, I was towards the end, I was kind of feeling like, oh, I wanted to add a little bit more depth to some of these metallic parts here. So I decided to bust out my Citadel wash and just give some of these parts a little bit of a wash, just to add like a tiny layer of grime and dirt and accumulation, just to help pick out some of the nice features, like the recessed and raised features on these parts, just to create a little bit of contrast there. And I mean, I didn't want to go like, I didn't want to make it look like this had been sitting in a warehouse for 50 years. I really wanted it to look like, okay, this is something that could feasibly be attached to an engine, off the factory and ready to go, and maintain that nice shiny look to it. So yeah, that's about it. I would like to express my gratitude to the Typhoon Legacy Company for sending this out to me and for trusting me to build it up and provide the feedback that they were looking for. I will leave their information down in the description down below if you feel so inclined to go help support a company that's restoring World War II era Typhoon. I encourage you to go check out their website, see what amazing work they're doing, and kind of keep up with all the cool things that they're doing. They will provide eventual photos and updates on the 1/8 scale engine that they're doing, and I think that's a pretty cool project as well. So yeah, definitely worth checking out their website. And if you've made it through this far into the video, I appreciate you for sticking around. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you're not yet subscribed. Finally, huge shout out to my patrons. Greatly appreciate them supporting the channel and allowing me to bring content like this to you. Hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful week, great month, and happy modeling. We'll see you on the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye.